to this day still hurts me because I feel pain when our athletes fail. I feel like we failed when our athletes fail. You build up calluses, right? You callous your spirit, you callous your soul. It's a grizzling that occurs.
And that just that internal, right, pressure is a privilege, that you care that much is pretty cool.
CJ Appenzeller is a performance coach, exercise physiology professor, and founder of ATS Strength. He started his business in a 180 square foot closet and has spent 13 years training everyone from youth athletes to MLB pros.
If we stripped all those titles away and you didn't have your title, would you still show up the same way?
Values are caught, not taught. I'm watching you do that and I'm soaking it in.
Everything was driven by emotion, right? Everything that you would say was driven. I don't like the way you're doing that. Versus, hey, that's not in alignment with what we do. That's out of alignment with our vision and mission.
Was there like one particular moment you can remember where it's like, enough is enough? All right, that's it. I can't do this anymore. Did you have that kind of moment? Welcome back to the Evolving Athletes Podcast, the show where we peel back the curtain on high performance and get real about what it takes to grow through struggle, not around it. Today, we're diving into a story that's as gritty as it is powerful, because behind every strength coach, behind every leader, behind every entrepreneur is a human being who's had to wrestle with their mindset just like the rest of us. CJ Appenzeller is one of those people. From starting his business in a 180 square foot closet to coaching everyone from youth athletes to Major League Baseball players, CJ's evolution as an athlete, a coach, and as a leader is nothing short of remarkable. But what makes his story even more powerful is the mindset underneath it all. The moments where he could have folded, but chose to double down on values, leadership, and service. We're going to uncover the struggles CJ faced, building multiple training facilities from the ground up, the identity conflicts he had to navigate as he moved from athlete to business owner, and the wisdom he now brings into leading both athletes and coaches alike. So if you're an athlete trying to figure out who you are off the field, a coach navigating leadership pressure, or just someone looking to understand what true strength really means, this one's for you. CJ, it's an honor to have you here. Welcome to the Evolving Athletes Podcast, brother.
Awesome, man. It's an honor to be here. I'm excited. That was the best intro of all time. So oh, yeah.
Everybody's loving it. I just diving in, getting after it. It's awesome. So, as we go through, I kind of like love jumping through the journey, right, with you guys, like getting after some of the early moments, and then, we kind of go through it. So, when you think about a moment for you in childhood, what was a moment in childhood where you remember feeling in charge of others, even informally? Almost like one of those first moments for you.
Yeah. I feel like childhood, you're calling me back. I wasn't ready for that, but that's okay. I feel like as long as I can remember, I've been doing what is now our core value. And I hate to plug our business core values in the first sentence, but our core values lead from the front, right? And the concept is that leadership requires no title. And I feel like forever I had been doing that, even as a kid at the bus stop, we used to do these races, and I was pretty quick, but I wasn't the fastest guy. Jordan, he was the fastest guy. And he's still probably faster than me today. But and I remember it seemingly would be Jordan should be the leader. But I remember kind of taking the reins of this thing and saying hey, here's the races for the week. Because we could only get a couple in, right?
Oh, yeah.
Here's the races for the week. This guy races, this guy. And just kind of setting up bracketology as a third grader and being listen, this is the way this is going to be structured. And then I'll set up the main event, myself versus Jordan. Jordan was a fifth grader on Friday. Right. And we'll kind of structure it that way. But that's a silly little example of the first time I ever thought of myself as, the quote unquote leader, but never really in title. And that's something that we're still trying to press on to our athletes today, or to our pro athletes, especially, we have pro athletes that in Major League Baseball, the way it works, and many people aren't aware, is you get drafted. You're not on that team. You're not on the Major League Baseball club, right? You're not on the Detroit Tigers when you get picked by the Detroit Tigers, right? There's a very big and long journey ahead of you when you get drafted to potentially make it to that Major League Baseball club. So many guys, after their draft class, after their draft year, they report to camp. They've been kind of identified as the best player at their college, or at their junior college, or maybe at their high school. They've been identified as a guy who would be a pro, who was a leader, right? And now they're small fish again, big pond, right? And then how do you show up in such a way that you can still lead, you can still identify as the leader, even though no one's telling you that's what you are, even though maybe no one's communicating that to you from from an upper management position, right? How do you still show up that way? Because we know showing up as a leader will benefit not only the performance of the individual, but also the mental kind of frameworks that they go through each and every day. It'll help there too. So it's like, how do we do that? And that's something we're still trying to master. So that was a really long answer to a short question. I feel like I've been doing that for a really long time, with and without the title. And I think the title is something that I appreciate the title of leader in our business. I appreciate the title of coach probably more than leader. Right. But I think it's something that if we stripped all those titles away and you didn't have your title as a coach, or you didn't have your title as a leader, would you still show up the same way? Would you still act the same way? Would you still use the mental frameworks that allow you to show up as the best quote unquote leader now with title? Would you do that same thing without that title? That's something that I'm challenging our guys on day in and day out, both from a team perspective and from an athlete perspective.
Yeah, I love how you frame that, man. Brilliant. And you bring up such a good point about that part, right? Of and this is why from a mindset perspective, it's so important if we don't raise awareness or create top of mind awareness to a specific principle of okay, then do we think about it, especially when you're younger, right?
Yeah.
And so, for you personally in that way too, since you gave a great example, right, of how somebody has to come to you in major leagues, right? All right, they're pointing that out to you, and now you have permission, or, oh, I didn't think of it that way. Now I will think about it, and I'll put that into my arsenal, right? From a mindset perspective. When you think back, who was that first person who saw that leadership in you before you saw it in yourself? Or was it you went through and you saw it in yourself and you built it? Or was it somebody else was already, hey, you're a really good leader, as a young man or as a kid coming up?
Yeah. So kind of a silly one, and then a more sports related reference. But I think my mother, she still to this day says this all the time. She's like, her thing is don't transfer your power. That's always been her thing, right? And I don't know if she knows what it means, and I certainly still don't really know what it means. But she yeah, but she'd be big on that. I would get into a scuffle at school. I would get into a little bit of trouble, which I had a tendency to do as a child and as a juvenile. But she would say, you're leaving your power up to someone else. You're transferring your power to someone else. And she would implore me to lead in both my actions and also with my words. So I think that was the first person that ever raised my awareness, as you put it, raised my awareness to the fact that I had power, right? And in so I could lead. Before that, yeah, Dawn, shout out. Yeah, she's great. But I think that was the first time I ever had that awareness raised to me. And then from an athletics perspective, I remember my freshman year playing baseball, Roman Catholic High School, I got named team captain. It was like a big deal to me because I didn't even know I was running for it. It was the first time that I had ever been given that label, given that authority, given that permission to lead the way in which I had kind of always thought I should and had been. But that was like the first person, my freshman year coach, to identify that in me and say, hey, listen, you can double and triple down on this. This is probably where you're most talented, which I thought was really interesting too. So essentially he said I sucked at baseball, but I was really
great work ethic, though. Great work.
Exactly. High motor guy, blue collar. Yeah, thanks, guy. Yeah, thanks, coach.
We all know what that means.
Exactly. Yeah, and I said that was pretty much the story of my athletic career, to be honest. High motor, blue collar, leadership ability. But I think I never been told that was something I was talented or skilled in, or something I should pour into until that moment. So my freshman year baseball coach, I think, was the guy that did that. And as I get older, I sit and I think about these moments. And my daughter, she's 3 months old. I'm thinking about at 3 months, how do I create that moment? How do I let her know that she can lead? How do I let her know that she's strong, that she's beautiful, that she's loved? How do I let her know that? So the daily manifestation of that right now is just us saying it to her every day, right? So we have these kind of mantras we said. But I'm curious to see, and I'm excited to get to that point of where that moment will be for her, and will I realize it? And I don't know, but I don't know the answer to any of those questions. But So yeah, I think that's the first time I realized I had power to lead, that I should be aware of that power. And then that was the first time someone told me like, hey, this is not only something that you can do, but it's something you should do and you should double down on.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. And talk about that, right? Like you said as a kid, right? That you got in trouble and all that stuff, right? I think this is always what's fascinating about leadership is I think most leaders can follow and say, yeah, like that's kind of what my youth was. I was getting in trouble. And it's kind of funny how there's a direct correlation between you were getting in trouble because you were a natural leader and you just saw things for what they were your way. Like you had these core values already, but the world didn't. It's not right. We know we're not growing up in a world that's, hey, how do we develop leaders? There's more about developing followers than there are leaders. Yeah. So there was no playbook on that side. So, talk about that part of as you were growing up and that influence of having people that saw that natural tendency in you and how much that offset the quote unquote troublemaker, right? Versus the ones that didn't and what it created inside of you. Can you go back and remember as a kid of like examples of where you saw the difference of, yeah, when someone believed in me as a leader versus not, and that troublemaker tendency that would kind of, come out?
Yeah, that's a really interesting kind of dichotomy that exists, right? Is like you as a juvenile, you get permission to lead. All of a sudden, you step into it and lead through what would be, a quote unquote accepted path, right? If you're not given the permission to lead, but you have a leadership spirit, a leadership ability, a leadership capacity, you tend to lead down paths that aren't quote unquote acceptable, which is kind of an interesting dichotomy. That's, I think, the way that a lot of my youth went, where had I not been given permission to lead in whatever way, in whatever kind of subset or group I was in or environment I was in, I would say, hey, let's see if we can break this thing. Let's see how far we can push it. I kind of see it this way. I think we could push it at this far, and I would try to test the end of that limit, and then I would try to get people to come with me. Like, hey, and we could do it. We could do it over here too. Yeah. But in those settings where I was given quote unquote permission, I would lead in such a way that was more acceptable to the authority, right? So we talked about freshman baseball. I was a big proponent of pushing everybody to be early, not late. I was a big proponent of pushing everybody to stay after. I was a big proponent of pushing everybody to come to what we call captain's practice or extra swings or the weight room in the morning. We used to lift in high school. I would lift with the lacrosse team because our baseball team didn't lift at 5:30 in the morning in the Axe. So I would always be pushing our guys, get in here, right down this kind of more socially acceptable path. Whereas in, my private life where I wasn't given that permission to lead, it was much more like, hey, let's see how far we can go without getting in trouble. And then if we do get in trouble, we'll know and we'll pull it back a little bit, right? I was big into that type of mischief and or, I was big into fighting. That was kind of like my thing too. And it's funny because now, fast forward all these years later, I train some of the greatest boxers in the world, which is awesome. Something I never really sought out to do. Never even thought I would do it. But I would try to organize a fight here, organize a fight there, do a little justice over here and see how many guys we could get to go with us. So yeah, it's interesting. I never thought of it until you just said it, but where permission was granted, I would lead in ways that were more acceptable to the hierarchy and the standard that was set by authority. And then in places that I wasn't given permission to lead, I would still lead. I would just lead down a path that was contrarian and probably would be considered more mischievous. So
yeah, no doubt. No, because it's a big, right? Like when we think about it from a leadership standpoint, that authority bias is so automatic, right? This is something we talk about a lot of like with coaches where, they forget that, oh, why don't they think for themselves? Why don't they do this? Right? There's all these questions all the time of they're struggling to understand why. And it's like, well, it's simple. When they're that young, they're looking to you as the leader. This is how you come up as a child, right, into high school. Like it's completely normal of course, you listen to your parents first, then you're listening to the teacher in school, then you listen to other people that are a part, of your ecosystem, whoever else that might be, coaches, friends, family, all this stuff. And it's always the adults in those formative years.
Yeah.
So you think it's just going to unlearn when they go into your environment and you're the coach and you're the one in charge and you're the one that has authority over them. You think, oh, they're just going to automatically do it. And it's like, well, no, there's all this residue of how they came up where along the line did they get to do it? Like when you say that and the doing, and that's what I mean is like the actual feeling, right? The play for that feeling of like, where do they experience that? That like, oh, I have wisdom now to go off of. Like the idea and conceptually is you're saying it, but where do they get to do it? And I think that's always an interesting contrast, right? Like when we go through this process.
Yeah, leadership doesn't really have any permit driving, right? Like, whereas like you teach somebody a new skill in your business, right? You hire a kid fresh out of college and you say, hey, you're going to be a strength coach, right? He comes in, he watches you coach. All right, cool. You watched me coach. You took some notes. You had a good feel. The next step is usually you're going to do it, right? You're going to, as the new coach, you're going to do it and I'm going to watch you. You're going to permit drive. I'm going to kind of sit in the passenger seat and I'm not going to let you swerve off the road. I'm not going to let you go the wrong way down a one way. Then I might back up and I might get into like kind of the back seat of the environment, right? And I might say, hey, I'm more of a fly on the wall. Now I'm letting you drive. You're still on your permit. I'm letting you drive. I'm still here. So if anything goes off the rails, I'll jump in. But otherwise, I want you to feel. I want you to move. And then finally you say, okay, cool. Now it's yours. If you need me, let me know, but I'll be elsewhere, right? That doesn't exist in leadership as you're coming up through the ranks of whether it be sport or not. In academia also, like there doesn't exist. There is no permit driving. It's you are in line to be a leader, then you're a leader. You're a follower, then leader.
Yeah. Beautiful analogy, right? It's like, because that's what it is. Like the one analogy I always give is, in the locker room, right? There's the leader. Everyone in the room knows that's the leader. And then there's I want to be captain. Yeah. I want it. And it's like, okay, well, go be a politician then. Exactly. Right. And it's just so funny to see that dynamic of everyone in the room, especially in high level, athletics. Like we all know that's the leader. It's just this innate thing that everyone knows in the room, versus the others that I want it. Yeah. So it's always funny to watch that, kind of like circulate. But, talk about that experience for you, right? Because you're clearly a natural born leader. It's what you do.
Yeah.
But taking us through that high school time of where it's not sharp, you've observed it, it's there, but there's no wisdom behind it, right? What do you recall as like the challenges, or a specific time that was like really challenging for you where you saw something, you really want to do it, but man, did you struggle to get it out and deal with it with the team or in any other environment where you're just young and you had no insight, right? Like, there's no playbook. What was that first real one like for you? What do you recall?
Yeah. So this is actually really timely. So I used to have a mentor as a business owner who would always say, like, the behaviors you've seen in your business that you've been made aware of, that you've seen other people do, you'll either, because again, there's no permit driving in business ownership, right? You sign, then you're open, right? And I opened my business at 19, so I definitely had no permit driving. So my mentor, what he would say is, he'd say, you're either going to replicate the behaviors you've seen or you'll complete the behaviors you've seen. And what that means is that you'll either just copy and paste, or you'll just polar opposite and complete where you see kind of an empty space or an incomplete loop. And I think that's really telltale and indicative of when you first start your leadership journey too. I think you're either going to go one or the other. You're not going to find the gray area that probably should exist in leadership where, right. Some people need a kick in the ass. Some people need a pat on the fanny, right? You're probably not going to find that initially. You're probably only going to do one or the other. You're going to do the polar opposite. You're going to complete what the leaders in front of you have done, or you're just going to replicate their behavior. So I think in high school, I can remember a specific moment where I was having a really, really bad game. And it was actually funny because some of my high school teammates still make fun of me about this to this day. And I having a bad game, and I was probably, I was 0 for 3 or whatever it was. When I came back to the dugout, and I took my bat, I threw it in the trash can. And so next up, my buddy, he comes back in, he slams his helmet, right? He's replicating my behavior because I'm the captain, and maybe just because he's frustrated. And now I've kind of opened, I've opened the jar, so to speak.
Right.
So the next day, game's over, we lose the game. Next day, our coach comes in, and our coach, he was known for being a pretty wild guy. He comes in, and he gets everybody in the dugout, and he takes my bat out of my bag, and he slams it in the trash can like I had done the day before. And he takes our catcher's mitt, his mitt, and he throws it. Our field is like right in high school was right on a major road. It's called Henry Ave, and he throws it over the netting onto Henry Ave, and the glove's just getting run over. And he turns around and he sprints. Our coach, no words have been said yet. Everybody sit down. No words since. Bat in the trash can, glove over the fence onto Henry Ave, and he sprints. Our dugout is on the third base side, or at least it was when I was in high school. I think they switched it because I know some of those guys now. And he sprints over through left field. In left field, there's a hole in the gate, and it backs up to a golf course. And I think it's the fourth green. And we just see him run over the fourth green, and you can see him kind of disappearing over the hill. And he didn't come back for practice. That was the end of practice. And so a couple of things came to mind when you asked me this question. Number one, my slamming of the bat, the throwing, all that stuff, I was replicating that behavior from our coach. I mean, that's just what it was. I had seen him blow up. I had seen him scream. I had seen him demean people. And I'm not saying he was a bad guy, right, wrong, or indifferent. I actually caught up with him a few years ago. As a matter of fact, I would say that he's an excellent guy. I think that his leadership ability probably needs work if he still leads that way, right? But I was replicating a lot of that behavior. So, and then my teammates, probably replicated some of it from me, from him, right? So it becomes this kind of like momentum snowball in the wrong direction that's just rolling and growing and growing and growing. But I think that was a moment for me that I had to really figure out what it meant to not perpetuate the same behaviors that I had seen in leadership positions just because I now had the title of leader. So I don't know if that answers the question, but it's what I thought of immediately, of him just sprinting over that fourth green and his head just disappeared.
Oh yeah. No, big time, right? I mean, you're spot on, right? Like, because this is always what's challenging, right? Is like, I always find it fascinating when coaches will get upset about something. You got to relax. Oh, you got to calm down. It's like, look, everybody calm down. Easy, Will Farrell. Exactly. Again, it's like, it's so goofy of like, hey, we're watching you model behavior. And you and I, we touched on this, right? Weeks ago, like talking about how like, I don't care how many books, you can get all the stuff, you can read all the information. And it still comes down to, when it's adolescence and when we're younger, it still comes down to modeling, right? Values are caught, not taught. I'm watching you do that, and I'm soaking it in. That's it. And it's amazing how we want you to do something opposite, right? I want you, I'm telling you this, I'm giving you this information, I'm yelling at you while I'm doing it, but I want you to be calm. I want you to be nice about it. I want you to be hardworking, even though I'm treating you like a scumbag. Like, it's like, but it's on you, kid. It's on you to behave like the way an adult doesn't know how to behave, but it's on you to figure that out. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. But that's the way that it's always been done, right? That's what we talk. Always been done, right? Always been done. At what point do we stop replicating that, right? At what point do we stop and we actually start to complete it? I think that's when you start to, and then, the real, in my mind, and it's like this thing where you replicate, then you start to complete, then you realize that there are time and place for both, and everything exists along a gradient, right?
Exactly.
And we go back to that analogy I used earlier, kicking the ass, pat on the fanny. Everybody needs to be communicated with differently, and everybody within your world needs different things at different times. And the way you lead one individual is not going to be the same way you lead everybody. And the way you lead that individual today is not going to be the same as the way as you lead him 6 months, 6 years from now. Right. Everybody likes to go to that analogy, the river and the man, right? A man and a river are never the same, right?
Whatever. Man goes through the same river twice. Yeah,
exactly. And man never goes to the same river twice because he's not the same. The river's not the same. That is 100% true, both biologically and mentally. That person in this moment may need something very different than what worked to get them over the hump or worked to get them a positive performance or their best performance earlier on. So I think, it's one of those things where you start, to your point, and I wrote that down, so I grabbed my pen. Values are caught, not taught. I love that.
Yeah, Randy Matzigill, that was a mentor also. I loved it, yeah.
Let's go, Randy. That's awesome. Yeah, that's going in our onboarding. But but it's you start with one, then you probably swing too far to the other side, And then what you realize is as you reach quote unquote mastery, I don't want to say I'm a master leader, but I'm a significantly better leader today than I was when I was in high school. And I'm also a better leader today than I was in, October, because I'm constantly, this is the thing now that is the bottleneck for our business, is my leadership ability. Our impact, our goal as a company, our vision is to be helping 600 South Jersey families month in and month out. Now, the only way we get there is if we have the right strategies and tactics, which we've been running the right strategies and tactics for 13 years. The bottleneck is now, what is my leadership capability? What is my capacity to lead individuals? And how do we move people in the direction of buying into not only our values, but also our vision and mission consistently and frequently? And that's, for me, something that I'm working on each and every day, right? All of my education, all of my learning, all of my focus is on that. How do I become a better leader? I still do a little bit of business stuff, right? I'm still educating myself in business. Sometimes like educating myself in business is actually overwhelming because I'm like, what we're doing is working. Like, don't do it. You have you have a great recipe for, a steak rub.
Champion the lineup. Here we go.
And then you're gonna
We've won 12 in a row. Why are we doing this?
Exactly. So it's almost like you don't want too much more. But the leadership piece is what I'm trying to get better at day in and day out. And the only way to do that is to realize that the right answer, quote unquote, the efficient answer, the effective answer, is probably somewhere in the middle. It's probably not going to be a black or white thing. It's probably not going to be a scream and yell, a hoot and holler, or a, hey, no worries, little to no accountability. So I think that was, sorry, I kind of tracked off there, but I'm good at that.
No, it was great, bro. It was great. But you nailed it right on that side of like, I think that's the biggest part that fascinates me about your story of right there, right? Of like, it's knowing the commitment you have to leadership. Like you're attuned to it, of knowing this is what I want to put my time into, and I'm going to work at it, right? And when your back's up against the wall, and I love that aspect of the nature of people who are natural leaders, have that capacity to know that when they're in that moment, what am I going to do? So, for you now, we're moving into, 20 years old, you started your own company.
19,
you got going?
19,
right?
First one. Yep.
So take us back to that moment of where, clearly, from a mindset perspective, that's not something that, from your story, right? It's like my back was against the wall and I had something intuitively, naturally, that I knew I'm going to make this work.
Yeah.
So help the listener understand, right? Because everyone's kind of different, but like from your perspective of, you're a natural born leader. So you had this disposition that I think a lot of people can't appreciate, because most people are being told, go get a job, go do something. You're like, nah, I'm figuring this out. Like, let's go. Like, right. And similar, like whenever it's like, okay, world ends, boom, get up, grow again.
Yep.
Talk about what that was like for you, 19, starting your own business, of like, take us back to there where it was like, I just knew I'm going to go do this. And what was that perspective for you from leadership of like, this is non-negotiable. I'm going for it. I'm doing it. What's that part that the listeners could take away as like, that's interesting, of like, can I dig into that?
Yeah. So I think the mindset around it, right? And people have heard before about the kind of how I started. One of my one of my coaches who actually moved to Baltimore, we were texting back and forth yesterday about an unrelated topic, but he goes, you started with a B&E. I was like, yeah. He's like, you left that out of the intern education, which I thought was really funny. But yeah, so I was invited to go train a guy, and we broke into a batting cage, and I got caught, and that's how I started the business. The guy who caught us said, hey, you're going to come in for an interview, and I thought an interview sounded a lot better than the police. So I said, let's do that for sure. He gave me a job, and then, I fast forwarded to subletting the space. But the reason, the mindset around it, and the reasoning that I wanted to do my own thing and didn't want to go work somewhere else is because I had been in collegiate weight rooms, I had been in high school weight rooms, and I had seen the lack of leadership. I had seen the lack of connection. I had seen the lack of focus. Not to say that the programming was bad or the lifts were bad, but the focus on the individual, the connection there. And I had gotten so much out of training, right? Training to me had become the thing that was way, way more interesting and way more fun than even my sport, right? Blue collar, right? But and I'd gotten that. I'd gotten confidence out of it. I had gotten really like the will to continue to go when things were challenging. A lot of that came from the lessons I learned through training, and I wanted to be able to provide that for other people. So in my mind, I said, hey, I'm not going to let anybody go through the pain that I went through, the pain of regret, the pain of lacking self-discipline, and or the pain of not feeling connected to the person in front of them or the people around them. So like, how do I manage this thing? How do I manage this big dream and vision and goal? And for me, it was just kind of intuitive. Like, I know what I need to do. I'm super passionate about this strength piece, A, and B, it's given me so much that I'll just find a way to make it go. And when, Jim was the guy who gave me that job opportunity, when I talked to him about it, we reconnected last spring at a game, biggest baseball game in the state for the high schools here in New Jersey. And it's down the shore where he now lives. Right. So he just happened to be there. I just happened to be there. Really cool moment. We had, 9 guys on the field for each team. Right. So it's 18 guys. We were training 16 of them for the 1 and the 2 in the state. And it's like, wow, this is a pretty big moment, right? This is kind of like, and we're blessed in that we have a lot of those moments now as a company where we go out to a high school baseball game. We're like, oh yeah, we got 12 guys in this game. We go out to the state championship, and it's the way they do state championship here is North versus South essentially. And our South Jersey team will have 8 of our guys. Right. So it's like, we're blessed to have a lot of those moments now, but I think it was one of those things where, man, it's like one of those, hey, this actually did work. And I was able to sit there with Jim, and I was like, you didn't expect this, did you? He's like, not really, no. It's like, but he saw something in me that I didn't see in myself. And I'm not sure if I'm still answering the question, but I think the mindset was that I wanted to give all the things that training had given to me back to people, and I would just figure out the rest, right? The details of it all.
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. What was there like, was there like one particular moment you can remember where it's like, enough is enough? Like, I'm sick of this. Like, cause that's always right. Where I feel like most leaders, there's like a big moment that just happens where you're like, all right, that's it. Like, I can't do this anymore. I have to go. I have to do my thing. Did you have that kind of moment?
Well, so it's funny because I didn't even really give anything else a chance. I didn't even try to get a job anywhere. I didn't apply anywhere. No. Yeah. So I think that was it. Right. I remember when I decided I wanted to be a strength coach. Before I decided I wanted to open my own gym, I remember the day I decided to be a strength coach. I was at a Division III school in Virginia. I was sitting in my room on my laptop, boom, 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 and I read a Joe DeFranco, shout out Joe, an article that he wrote about something. It was an Ask Joe. I don't even remember what it was.
Yeah.
But then I just realized, like, what does he do for work? That's literally what I said out loud. I go, what does he do for work? And I like Googled his name, and his like website came up, which I was already on the website. I was like, no, I need to know like his title. like I got to understand what it is. And then he had somewhere like a blurb about Joe or whatever it was. And it was like, Joe is a strength coach. And I was like, oh, I'm a strength coach. Yeah. And my roommate's like, what is that? I was like, I'm not really sure, but I'm a strength coach. Like today, like right now, I'm the strength coach around here. I was like, you want me to train you? I'll train you. I started training my roommate, Brandon. I was like, you're my athlete. I train you. I'm your strength coach. I remember that moment. And I don't know if that's what you mean, where it was like, enough's enough. But I remember thinking like, no one has, and no one's providing what I want to provide. Not only, of course, I was a nerd. I'm still a nerd for the training. I'm an exercise physiology professor. I just came from there. I put on a gray sweatshirt and got on the call. But I love training. But I remember thinking no one is going to be able to connect with the person in front of me and make them. We always talk about this in our intern onboarding. It's the definition of coach, right? To take someone from where they are to where they're trying to go, right? I was confident at 18 years old that I knew no one else was going to care as much as I was going to care about the athlete in front of me and care about their journey as much as I would. I knew no one would take on the steps required for their journey to be completed more than I would. And actually that to this day still hurts me because I feel pain when our athletes fail. I feel like we failed when our athletes fail. And I just remember that. And that was, I guess, the moment where enough was enough. I remember thinking, what is Joe DeFranco? Typing it in. And then the next thing being like, no one is going to care as much as I care about your journey. So I'll do it. I'm not going to let anybody else do it.
That's cool. Well, that's just that internal, right? Pressure is a privilege. The fact that you get to feel that spiritually, that you care that much is pretty cool, right? A lot of people don't realize it's like, it's cool. I get to feel, yes, it's hard to feel the feelings, but it's also cool that, wow, my life has aligned to this of like, I get to feel that for another human being. Like that's the interesting part, right? About the dynamic.
We have then, and I gotta just plug this in really quick. So we have guys on our staff now who have been with me for a while, and they haven't felt that feeling, that crippling feeling of anxiety because I failed this person. And we start to get some of those, 2 years in, 3 years in, where a member of our staff come in, they'll just be distraught. And I'm so like, it's this weird thing. Cause like they're clearly distraught, anxious, worked up. And I'm like, so excited. I'm like, oh, welcome to the show. Right. Like,
welcome to reality.
Exactly. Yeah. I've been doing this for like 15 years like that, dude. Yeah. So, but it makes me really proud that they feel that. And that might be sick and very, I think of the Shane Gillis, dark and twisted, but it might be very dark and twisted, in some ways, but I'm really, really happy that our staff now embodies, again, values are caught, not taught, right? That they've caught the value of what we call hashtag A-team. And in the fact that this is a family that masquerades as a gym, not a gym masquerading as a family. So I love that. And, it's something that I hope we have strategies to manage some of that. Right.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. We have what's called the anti-burnout module in our onboarding and in our playbook. We have strategies for that, but it is something that I'm like kind of weirdly proud of, that our team feels the way that I felt in those first days where I said, I'm going to do everything I can to move you down this path. And if you fall short, it's going to be me falling short. But if you succeed, it's you. We've always been structured that way. We don't want credit for anyone's victories, but if you fall short, we'll definitely wear that. We'll wear that.
That's all. Well, it's the idea, right, of like from a leadership standpoint, any good leader knows it's like the borrowed confidence, right? If I can instill that in you, I can share the wisdom with you to make you feel the thing. Well, now it uplifts you enough to feel the thing. And now that feeling is going to lead to the behavior and the action. And then you do the thing and you go, I did it. Now, boom, it's plugged in, reticular activating kicks in, boom, and I can do it. And we're off and running, build to the next thing, right?
Yep.
And so that's the fun part about it. Talk about your process in that of like, so, obviously you've been around for so long now that it's like you've got a ton of wisdom on the one side. But talk about that early struggle of where, how you were interpreting the information and that internal language of were there times where you were doing the old, I'm so done with this, I'm going to quit, I can't stand this, right? Because when the way you, you share the intensity of your spirit, I'm like, there's got to be times, man, he was like, that's it, I'm done, right? Because I know I quit millions of times. It's like, I never quit. I was like, okay, I'm going to say it, but I'm not actually going to do it, right? There's a very different thing in that context of quitting that I find fascinating. I love to know, like, spiritually for you, what's that journey been like of where so much comes on you as the leader, as the one that has to lead in that way? How did you go through the major struggles at first of like finding and wrestling between those two energies?
Yeah. I mean, that you talk about quitting and not stopping, right? That's like what you just described was Monday. It's like that's not something that I think stops. In the early days, it was significantly harder to manage because the first couple times you feel a feeling, right? It's like anything else, right? The first time you break a bone, the first time you fall down, the first time you get punched in the face, all those things feel like the world ends, right? That's the end of my world, right? First time you get your tooth knocked out, first time you get your nose broke, all those things happen. You're like, oh my God, that's it. I'll never bounce back from this. And then you build up calluses, right? You callous your spirit, you callous your soul. And I don't think it's a negative connotation. That's not what I mean to present.
Not at all.
I think it's we call it grizzled. It's a grizzling that occurs, right? A grizzled man. You think about the old guy on the porch, the vet right on the porch. He's got the cup of coffee in hand. He's kind of not the happiest guy, but right? Like I think about that guys all
His nails.
of it. Oh yeah. He can fix anything. You're like, what? Hammered? What is going on over here? I just fixed you know. But that's what I think of, and I think of like the grizzling of my spirit early on. Everything felt like life or death. Everything felt like, if a member would cancel, I remember specifically, and you and I have a mutual mentor, Justin Kavanaugh, who him and I still talk about this to this day because we still feel it. That's what I mean. I don't think it ends. Like when a member would cancel or a member would pause their membership.
Hate to lose.
It'd be like, oh my God, like, what do you mean? Like after everything we've been through, and you'd be trying to like reason with yourself about it, like where the moment was, and you'd be trying to reason with the individual, what did I do wrong? Like, where did I drop the ball?
Mm-hmm.
And then you realize like, get grizzled. It's like, you know what? They might leave and they might come back. And if you throw the quitter party after every single one, number one, you're going to be throwing a lot of those parties. But number two, you might close the door on accident to what could be an amazing relationship later on down the road. So I think to answer the question, if I remember times like that, yeah, I mean, I still go through those times at scale now, right? So now it might not be the one member that canceled, but it might be failing permits in our building, right? Like, so at scale, but of course I feel those feelings, and of course I want to quit, but I just never stop. And I think the will to never stop goes back to the mission and back to the vision, right? What is the mission? To change lives one rep at a time. I can't do that if I'm at home, right? I can't do that if we don't have locations, if we don't have opportunity. And then what's the vision? To be helping 600 South Jersey families. People think I'm kidding, but like when I started saying that, people thought I was kidding. And I'm like, okay, if you think I'm kidding, I'm not. I'm telling you, we're going to be helping 600 South Jersey families. And now we're like 76 or 77%. We do in our leadership team chat, we do a running percentage every month, right? So we're almost there. And I'm starting to get our leadership team ready and the rest of our team ready now too, into the idea that like, we're probably just going to push the number to 1,000 because I don't see why we should have less impact as we open more locations. But I think now our idea and our identity is driven so much by that vision that stopping is not an option. Quitting, yeah, like you said, we could quit every day. I quit all the time. Yeah. I quit, and then I take 3 deep breaths around a box breath, and I go back inside.
Exactly, a good solid protocol. Yeah, we'll talk about that in a second. But yeah, no, and I love that, right? Of like, this is what it is, right? And you're so principle driven, and you can tell, right? What I love about your story too is you brought up of the Tony Robbins firewalk, that you had done that. So here's somebody that, as a leader, I've been in it. I'm in it to win it. I'm going to do all the stuff. And then there's another step that your evolution kind of takes, right? In the mindset. Talk about what that experience was like leading up to it. Where were you at that point mentally? And then when you did it, you shifted and it opened up a whole new portal for you as a leader in reality. And what else now can I bring where suddenly I shifted? Because that's always fascinating, right? It's like we get those times where it's like we go to another place and it literally was like instant, which is crazy. But it took all the time leading up to that point for it to become instant.
Yeah. Yeah, that's always funny too. I get those moments, like those rapid shifts. So, and Tony talks about like rapid shifts of physiology, right? That's one of, I shouldn't say his thing, but that's one of his things, right? If we can change our physiology, we'll change our psychology, is like one of his driving principles. I don't know if that's on his website or anything, but that's what it seemed to me from being in American. So I get those all the time, but that was the first time I recognized it and was self-aware enough to put my finger on it and say, oh, this is a new thing now. I'm different than I was yesterday because of this physiological shift I just went through. So leading up to the Tony experience, the Tony Robbins firewalk experience, I think I was in a kind of an overwhelmed place, kind of a place where I didn't really know, probably lack of clarity is the best way to describe it. I had reached a certain level of success. I wasn't really sure if there was more, which sounds silly now looking at what we've done versus where we were then. But I wasn't, I was in this like very strange space of, is there more? Like, is there a limit? Could we train any more people? I don't want to have more employees, I don't want to have more members of the team. And there was a lot of like that scarcity mindset and that scarcity mentality. And then you go show up for what you think is going to be a seminar like any other seminar, and the guy filled an arena. Like, oh wait, dude, I'm in the 200 level. Like I'm in the top of this thing. And then you're 48 hours in, you haven't slept yet. You're singing and dancing, you and all this stuff. Yeah. And he's like, we're going to go walk on fire. Are you ready? Yeah, I am ready. Yes. Yeah, I'm ready to go.
I'm ready.
I'm like, I can't believe I'm ready, but I'm ready, and people around you kind of like, there was a few like in that 200 level with us. They were like, I'm not doing that. I was like, yes, you are. Like, this is how riots begin, right? Like this is
exactly.
Yeah. But I think that was the first time I had enough self-awareness to realize the power of simply switching on or switching off. That was the first time I realized that you could actually do it. Because I think the concept to me was so foreign, like, hey, just do more, right? Alex Hormozy's like huge right now. I'm sure everyone listening to this podcast has heard of him, right? And I listen to his stuff quite a bit. I'm a fan. So some of it's a little bit ridiculous, but it is like also simplistically genius. He's like, well, why don't you just do more? And everybody's like, well, I never thought that. He's like, well, why didn't you think of it? Because it's just more of like what you're doing, just do it. It's like, it cost me whatever. It costs, on his podcast. So funny. It's like, it cost me $36 to get a client. All right, well, how much are you putting in? $3,600 a month? Oh, wow, that's a lot. Why don't you just 10X? It's like, what? Well, if you just spent $36,000, you would get 10 times more people, and then you could sign up 10 times more people. It's like, oh, right. Like, but I love that like simplicity of scale and the simplicity of the idea, like just flip the switch. Right. So I think that's what Tony Robbins and the Walk on Fire did for me. It flipped that switch. It was like, no, you could do way more. Like, stop thinking that your current circumstance is the end circumstance. This is the end of the race. And as a matter of fact, it could just simply be the beginning if you choose to make it such. So I think that's kind of where that began for me. And then I've needed that, again, I think everybody's like learning, growing always, right? And if not, you're probably dying. So as a leader, I still need that. And sometimes it doesn't have to be these big grandiose events where I walk on fire. Sometimes I just need to see something else and I go, oh, wow, there's more in the tank. For me, I'm not to compare, right? I think comparison is the thief of all joy. And I tell our guys constantly, like, hey, eyes forward at the urinal, like let's stay focused on what we're doing. But but I do, when I see something else and I see someone going big for something, and that could be in business and life and whatever, it does flip that switch again for me, where it's like, there's probably more here. We probably don't have to make this the end of the race. There's probably significant upside potential on the other side of my current thoughts and beliefs around what I'm doing. So how do I flip the switch? For me now, that was the first time I ever did it, walking on fire. But for me now, all I have to do is see something and it switches for me. And I could be on fire, like my feet were. I could be on fire for 3, 4, 5 days from seeing something silly. I saw a cheesesteak spot a couple months back, and I'm still kind of thinking about it. Like the scary spot, seriously. Like, I'm like, how are they doing this? And you're like doing the math in your head, and but it's less about the math, and it's more about like the idea that they're not letting, we're a cheesesteak spot, so we're going to sell whatever 10, I don't know the cheesesteak economics, but we're going to sell 10 cheesesteaks an hour, and that's that. The idea that they could do so much more, we could do so much more. So yeah, I know that's a really long answer to a really short question. I apologize, but yeah, that was the first time I ever flipped the switch.
No, that was awesome. Well, what you revealed in there was really important to point out is, talk to me about, how you evolved your curiosity. Because clearly you're a very curious individual in that way. And like, you're digging in that way. What does that look like day to day for you, where naturally, because what I'm assuming, it's just natural for you to be asking questions all day long, and you're just trying to solve, and you're trying to figure out. Talk about how that went from a natural, in the earlier days as business owner, to then it just became, oh, now I can form it and shape it. And this is Like, was there a time, talk about that curiosity piece? Cause I could sense that about your process of like, that's clearly there.
Yeah. You know, what's interesting about that? That's the buffering or the death of ego, kind of what I went through. And I don't think you're never dead to your ego, right? We're all fallible human, but like I think when I was able to, and I think that's probably now that as we're kind of communicating about it right now, like I think that's probably what the Tony thing was too, is like some of that scarcity is rooted in the idea of your ego. Like I'm as good as it gets, right?
Right.
I don't know. Are you? Like, am I? I'm not even as good today as I will be tomorrow. So how can I sit here and think that this is as good as it's going to be? Right? Like I'm the limit of insert thing, insert coach, insert business owner, insert leader. Like, how can that be? So I think, that curiosity grew as I was able to push down my ego and my own kind of negative thoughts around other people's process, other people's ability, other people's actual deliverables from a business perspective. When I could push that down and like really look, and I could still be critical, of course, right? And I think we all should be. I'm critical of our own product, of my own coaching, of my own teaching. But to just be negative for the sake of negativity to protect your own ego is something that I struggled with when I was young. I probably continue to struggle with it to this day. Although I will say, the better I am at mastering that self-critiquing individual or that self-preserving individual inside of me, inside my brain, the better I am at kind of keeping him quiet, the more curious I become. And because of that curiosity, the better I get. It's this ultimate dichotomy of like, hey, if you can control, like you need to have confidence. I'm not saying don't be confident in your product, but if you can control the idea that, you're not the greatest thing since sliced bread, you're not the end state of even your own being. If you can control that narrative, then you could be overly curious in some ways and continue to learn, grow, and develop at a significantly higher pace. So I think that is the simple answer to that question is when I was able to silence my own ego enough for me to see what was around me is when I became curious. And now every single day begins with some curiosity. It begins with gratitude and then kind of goes right into curiosity. So every day, like I'm not big on morning routines, any of that stuff. I'm just big on 3 things every morning. I start every morning the same way. I read 2 pages. That's it. 2 pages. And I do 1 gratitude. Like I have a gratitude journal. It's literally 3 questions. And that's all I do. I found that that's what works for me. So I say 3 things I'm grateful for. And I try not to repeat anything I've said that I can remember. So, I could wake up every day and thank God for my wife, and it would never get old to me. But right. I want to have a raised awareness around all the things that are amazing, right? So I think about that. And then the next thing I do is I read 1 page from the Bible and I read 1 page from John Maxwell's leadership book. Have you ever seen this book?
Which one?
It's his leadership. I got it right here. It doesn't go far.
Yeah.
It's his.
I'm not looking at my bookcase.
The Maxwell Daily Reader.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Elite book. This is my 3rd time through it because it's 1 year. Like the book is 1 year.
Right. Daily. Yeah, that's cool.
And I keep going through it. And this year I'm doing purple outline. So last year I did pink outline. So I'm like outlining the same stuff. But yeah, and that's all I do. So every day begins with a level of curiosity around my faith, around what I'm grateful for, and then around how I can be a better leader. And when I do these things, now, like every other person in the world, I miss some days, right? And what I found is when I miss, I can't be curious that day. And I can't lead as effectively. And everything feels forced and it feels gritty and like I'm going to do it. And I'm not somebody who doesn't show up, right? We talked a lot about, kind of my grit as a personality trait. So I'm not going to not do it, but it's not going to be the same. It's not going to have the same feeling if I do the right things and set my day up in such a way that's structured around curiosity. And then, you talk about being a coach, like that's all coaching is genuine curiosity for the individual, right? I have a million strategies. I was talking to my pro athletes yesterday about nutrition. I have 1 million it might actually be that number. I have a million strategies on how you can gain weight. But I can't just give you them all. And the funny part is, if I gave you all 1 million, you would do zero and none would work for you. So
Exactly.
so I have one of my athletes sending me everything he eats right now, right? And this is a multi-year professional athlete. Send me everything you eat, right? And he's arguing with me. He's like, I eat great. Send me everything you eat, dude. Because I need to be curious in what you eat before I can give you the next step, right?
Yeah.
I need to be curious in what you felt before and what's worked before and what hasn't worked before I can give you the next exercise. I need to be curious in all the elements of your life and everything that's pushed you to this point, why you do what you do in order to appropriately motivate you and move you in the direction of your goal. So that's what coaching is genuine curiosity. So I guess that was, again, a long answer, but every single day starts with curiosity. And if it's going right, every day ends with curiosity.
Yeah. I love how you prime the pump there on that of like, hey, I start the day, boom, I know where I'm at, and it starts. Talk about how do you manage that when it's not there? Like when it's those days where it goes there, what is the strategy then?
Yeah.
Like, how do you manage that?
Yeah. So interestingly enough, I missed one day this week, and it was it was Thursday. Yeah, it was yesterday. We had an early meeting at my furthest location, and I just kind of woke up a little late, and I just did some international travel a couple of days ago, so I'm still kind of like jet lagged. My Aura scores are coming back like 40. So I was like, I'm going to manipulate this thing a little bit, and I'm going to on purpose miss. And I knew it, and I knew I should not. And but so the strategy when I do miss is that the reason this took me so long to grab is because it was in my bag. So the strategy is that I'm going to just get through the first thing, and the first chance I get, I'm going to fake a bathroom trip, and I'm going to do this in the bathroom. So if you see me at like a conference that starts early and you see me in the bathroom reading the Maxwell Reader or my Bible, that's what I'm doing. I have zero shame in the game. I'm like sitting on the sink in the bathroom, because I know it's gonna create the opportunity for me to be the best version of myself. So
you're putting a pin in it. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. So if it cannot happen at all, right? And so when I travel internationally, those are the 3 books I take. Sometimes what I'll do is to cut down my travel, like I'll actually take a picture, because I told you I don't read one page. I'm not like I'm not over here like I read 12 books a day. Like I can't even commit to that because I know I won't do it. So I just read a page. So sometimes I'll just take a picture of the page and I'll pull it up on my phone, and I'll do it that way. You know, if I'm gone for 2 or 3 days, I might just have 3 pictures. But yeah, for me, like if I can't get that in, it's really, really hard. And that's why I've shortened the system, to your point. That's why I've shortened the system to those 3 things, 2 pages, three gratitude questions, because I can almost always do it. And if not, then I'll do it at the first sign of any clearance. You know, take bathroom trip. Here we go. Hey guys, just give me a minute. I just got to use the bathroom.
Exactly.
You always take 2 books to the bathroom? Yes, I do actually.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's what I love so much about your process, right? It's about the consistency. And we chat about with our players all the time, and you hit the nail on the head, right? Of like, I've had buddies, right? It's like, oh, I'm going to commit to 10 pages. I'm going to read 15. I'm going to read 30. And I'm just like, why don't you just read 3?
Yeah.
Why don't you read 2? Like, what is the simplest number for you that you know for sure you could do? What's that number? Oh, I could definitely do 2. Then do 2.
Yep.
Consistently. Watch. If you just do 2 consistently for a year, you'll be shocked how suddenly it'll turn into 3 or 4 or 5 easily.
All the time.
But the consistency is what always gets missed, right? Oh, so often with athletes and people, you know, inside of this world of like high performance, is that I have to do 30 minutes of it. I have to do an hour. I got to do the morning routine.
Yep.
No, you don't. No, just choose what you know. Gratitude, read, boom. Hey, it's going to take me a couple minutes, but it sets the tone for me. That's my jam. That's my thing. And then from there on, I feel good that I did that. It sparked what I needed personally.
Exactly right.
Which is beautiful, right? When you do that, I love that. Turning into, you know, you managing and you dealing with all the different locations and the personalities and all that. Talk about how you're shifting mindset in there. How are you managing that aspect of, you know, going from one location to the next or different programs to the next? Like, what does that look like, you know, for you from a mindset perspective of, is there any slight shifts that you've recognized? Yeah, in dealing with this location or with dealing with these personalities, I have to shift how I deal with that. And I've learned how to manage that and professionalize that in my own way as I go through that.
Yeah. So a few things I'll note on here, and this is what I'm like talking about all the time. So now you're really getting me going, because this is like where I nerd out right now. Like I said, like our bottleneck in our business is leadership. And if I could take this up a level, and again, like business is just like breaking the current model and then, fixing it, right? Like that's what business is. So like our current model, we're in a really good spot, and my leadership is the thing that needs to break. So it's going really well right now, but I know it needs to break in order to grow. So, so I think number one is the who's on your team, right? So getting the right who's is where I am most focused with all of my time, energy, and commitment right now. And I think the biggest piece of that is identifying what are the objective behaviors that are linked to your core values. And it's so hard in an interview process, which is why ours is 4 phases, because otherwise, like a 10-minute call, even an hour-long conversation, it's hard to identify what actually are these objective kind of behaviors. And is this person doing them? Anybody can fool me, and I'm easily fooled because I'm a coach, because I'm a leader, because I see potential in people, not sometimes reality. I'm easy. So I needed 4 phases to like talk myself out of being fooled all the time. So that's where it starts for us. Like, how do I manage all these different behaviors? Well, or all these different people and locations and programs. Well, I manage them because I only now hire and bring people in that match our core values. So I could speak, and we talk about having a language, right? A language identity within the team that makes sense. And if I can speak in our language plainly to an individual, I know that I've done a good job onboarding them to what we believe, A, and B, there's a really high likelihood that they're going to be able to follow through with the behaviors we need them to do to be successful. If I can say, hey man, that's not hard hat, and one of our guys knows what that means, I can not only hear me, but also then act on it. We're in a really good spot. So first thing is get the right who's. The second thing is create a common language that everyone speaks. And anyone who doesn't speak that language, at least initially, right? You're bringing in new people, you're doing all things. That's just the Seth Godin. We say it all the time. People like us do things like this. We say that probably 100 times a week to interns, to new staff, right? People like us do things like this. People like us are 15 minutes early, dude. People like us always stay late. People like us always genuinely care about the person in front of us. People like us always treat everyone like family. People like us always greet everyone 10 seconds from the time they walk in the door with their name and a high five. People like us do things like this. That's just what we do, right? So that commonality of language and the objective measures and behaviors that are linked to those core values make the leadership piece so easy. The next thing is, we talk about genuine curiosity a lot on this conversation. One of the best ways to be genuinely curious about someone is, especially within a leadership frame, is have a common cadence of communication, right? So we talk about one of the biggest issues in the fitness industry, and if you're in the fitness industry and you're listening to this, maybe this resonates with you, is a lack of cadence, right? Or a lack of effective cadence in leadership relationships. So a lot of people will have a personal training director or a director of a program, quote unquote, breathing down their neck. What does that mean? That just simply means that the cadence is significantly too high, and most of the feedback is framed around a negative loop. People will say, I haven't talked to my boss in months. I haven't spoken to him in weeks, right? That's a cadence that is far too spread out. Or my boss just always says I'm doing great, right? That is a cadence that is not clear. So like breaking those 3 loops, or those 3, what we've found or kind of identified as weakness chains in the industry, has been really, really important to our leadership. Having a cadence that is not only effective, but also a mix of positive and or negative feedback, and most importantly, clear. Clear is kind, right? Whenever you're not clear with someone on your team, you are doing them a disservice. And I know that sounds easy if you're listening to a podcast, but think about what you really want to say to somebody and how much you change what it actually is to not seem mean, right? By doing so, you are being mean. Like, that's the definition of being mean, is being unclear in leadership. So of course you don't have to say, hey, you suck, but you do have to say, hey, I need significantly better effort from you. What you can say is, hey, it all looks good, when it doesn't, right? And so it does a few things. When you're clear, again, we talk all the time, by the way, downstream and upstream, but that clear is kind, right? When you're clear, it does a few things. Number one, it makes your compliments significantly more powerful. Because I'm always clear and honest, when I give somebody a compliment, they're never wondering, is he just saying that? They're always pretty sure that I mean it, right? Because I'm clear, when I say something's a little wacky or off path or not the way we want it or not up to snuff, people are pretty sure that they should make adjustments to get it there, right? They're not questioning, oh, does he really mean that? Or, oh, maybe he's just in a bad mood. It has nothing to do with it. I'm always clear. So therefore, the standard has been set that like the communication that I then go ahead and put out into the world is that. Right. So those are some of the key strategies. I think cadence, clear as kind are really big ones. And then core value, competency. Those are all C's. That could be like the 6 C's or something. But, clear as kind, core value, competency, cadence of communication are some of our big ones that we found has made it really a lot more manageable to lead at scale. We also have a great what we call lateral accountability system, where anyone is free. And I tell every intern this on day one, and every facility leader and our regional director, the same thing is, hey, anyone can hold anyone here accountable. Leadership requires no title, right? What does that mean? I say it all the time. I say it on podcasts, I say it wherever. Anyone will listen to me. If an intern comes in and sees that I did not do something that I said I would do, they should and are allowed and encouraged to tell me that, right? Hey, you said you would do this. You didn't do it. You didn't get it done. Right? Hey, is there a bottleneck? I would love for an intern to say, hey, what's the bottleneck for you getting this thing done? Because I say that all the time to our guys. I go, hey, what's the bottleneck? Right? I would love to come in and say, hey, what's the bottleneck for you getting the marketing campaign out? Like, I would love that. That would be excellent, right? So we have that lateral accountability. I don't want anyone to feel like they live in a silo, number one. And number two, I don't want anyone to feel like they live in a position in a hierarchy where they can't speak their mind and or hold someone else accountable.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that, because that's just wisdom across the board right there. And I hope the listeners that was unbelievable, right? Especially the clarity part. Again, sounds simple. You're listening to it, sounds simple. But to really work through that process of, let me make sure as a coach, athlete, it's all same stuff of right, as a family, that clarity is being able to specifically state, here's what I'm looking to do from the behavior, why, here's how it might impact me. There's so many great variables that you can go down the rabbit hole on when you start to chase clarity, when you start to look for it, because it opens the portal to, is that clear enough? Is it not? Right? It's like, you're just kind of like that obsession, right? I'm like, how do I make that even better and better and better? And you can't overdo clarity. That's what I found is like, there's no such thing as overdoing clarity.
Yep.
Period. First stop. And that's what I love about that is like that you guys dial in on that so much from a leadership standpoint, because that's it. That's it right there, is figuring out. And then making sure to the other person, that makes sense. Are you clear on what I said? Like, do you understand? Like, right, as a leader, I'm going to be clear to you, but then I got to make sure and be responsible and know, are you receiving that? Yeah. Because that's on me too. Like, did you receive that? Did you hear that the right way?
Yeah.
And, so I love how you're the obsession on that part.
Yeah.
Talk about, from a leadership standpoint, accountability was interesting how you brought that up. Talk about accountability part, or just in general of what have you seen has changed maybe in your approach or just in general when it comes to leadership today versus 10 years ago? When you're getting going, and how have you seen evolved, whether it's with the athletes now, it could be the pro athletes, young high school, people at work you're dealing with. Is there something that you've observed that, yes, over the last decade, for sure, from a leadership lens, I've had to adapt and change this approach significantly, or this is for sure a change I made?
Yeah. So I'll say from a staff perspective first, because I was kind of on that wave. I was kind of riding that bad boy. So
keep riding.
Yeah.
Oh, here comes another one.
Yeah. So from a staff perspective first, everything needs to be objective that you hold someone accountable to. You can hold people accountable to feelings. To your point about you can never be too clear. Holding people accountable to feelings is by definition mean, because it's a lack of objectivity, and you can never grade someone effectively. We've even gone as far as like we have So we have a perfect session framework we use for our coaches, right? And it's just 8 things. Okay. And one of them I mentioned earlier, just kind of in passing, because it's always on my mind, is did you greet everyone within 10 seconds by their name with a handshake or a fist bump, right? And it sounds like silly, and it's like, oh, well, like you're micromanaging them. I'm not. I'm being kind, because I want to be able to objectively say to you, hey, you're not greeting people the right way, right? For what our standard is. People like us do things like this. People like us greet everyone within 10 seconds with their name, right? Why do we do that? And I can tell you why we do that. We do that because someone's name is the sweetest sound in the world to them. We do that because we're the best part of people's days, more so than not. And to do that, to start with the sweetest sound that they've ever heard, every single time they come in, creates a consistent feeling where they want to continue to come back, right? Cheers, right? Obviously, everyone knows cheers, right? Sometimes you want to go, right? And that's exactly where you want to go. Because I know when I'm greeted by my name, I'm significantly happier than when I'm not, right? I know when I walk into the classroom this morning, my students at the college call me CJ. That's what I told them. I just say, hey, call me CJ. I don't worry about any of the other stuff, professor, any of that. When I walk in,
hey, buddy.
Yeah, hey, buddy. Yeah. If they hit me with a buddy, I might be upset. But yeah, CJ. So, but I know, like, when I walk in the classroom and I'm there before them, when they walk in, CJ, I'm like, this is awesome. Like, I get the opportunity today to lead and to do my thing, to teach, to hopefully influence and positively impact. And the same thing goes on the other side, right? Somebody's coming in to train and they hear their name. Hey, Susan, what's going on? Immediately you're thinking, oh, I get to get better today. And this person cares about me doing that, right? So that's like one of the things, right? But so I say all that to say we hold people accountable to everything being objective. We have a definition for anything and everything we can hold you accountable to. If I don't and I want to hold you accountable to it, we'll have a meeting to structure an objective measure by which I can do that, right? Because otherwise it all exists in this gray area that's not clear enough to really be a measure, right? So one of the things that my new leaders have trouble with, which is funny, is they'll go like, this guy's off a little. One of the staff members, this guy's off a little. And I'll say to them, you're not allowed to go to him and say he's off. You can ask him if he's okay, but you can't say to him in such a way that like you're holding him accountable or pushing him to behave differently. You can go see if he's okay. Of course, care about him, right? But you can't say he's doing something wrong because he's not objectively, right? And until you have a metric, until you have a behavior that is objectively out of alignment with what we do, then you're not allowed to hold him accountable to it. So we're big on that, right? I know when somebody's off, and of course I care. Of course I ask, hey, is everything good? I can tell immediately. I can tell when they walk in there. I don't have to look at them, right? You feel the energy, right? You feel the vibration of the space, and you could tell immediately, but you can't say, hey, I need you to pep up. Like, that doesn't mean anything, right? What it does mean is that you care enough about the product, which is good, but you don't care enough about your leadership to get really crystal clear. And you need to double down on that. So yeah, I think that's one of the things that is big difference now versus 10 years ago. Everything was driven by emotion, right? Everything that you would say was driven. I don't like the way you're doing that. Like even the way you would present the words, the language you use was all driven. I don't like. Right. That's emotional driven language versus, hey, that's not in alignment with what we do. That's out of alignment with the behaviors we take day in and day out. That's out of alignment with our vision and mission. Those are that language is based on objective measure versus, I don't like that, or I hate it the way you did that. That's all emotional based kind of communication. So from a team perspective, that's our big thing. I'd say in an accountability structure for athletes nowadays versus before, when I'm coaching, and the only athletes I'm really coaching are professional fighters right now and professional baseball players. So and that's essentially it. I'd say holding them accountable is more about holding their, what's the best way to put it? Their focus, right? In a world now that is so overpopulated with information and focus, the accountability for a professional athlete in my mind, at this current juncture, I think it's about holding their focus on what it is that we've determined will get them the result that they want. Because so often we're jumping from tactic to tactic, strategy to strategy, swipe to swipe around, should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? Should I be doing this? Should I be doing that? When in reality, like physiological changes and or psychological changes take time. They're not going to happen in a 30-second reel, right? So then what do we have to do to hold them accountable? We have to hold their focus on the thing that we know will get the result, but it'll just take longer than that 30-second reel or that next doom scroll. So I think that's like the main change I've seen, where when I started out, Instagram was brand new. And guys wouldn't use it. I mean, they certainly wouldn't spend 8 hours a day on it, right? Now you have every college and professional athlete almost in the world probably spends more than 4 to 8 hours a day on social media, it's really funny because each sport has their own thing, right? Like baseball players still use Twitter, which is like, I've never used Twitter. I don't even know what it is. Like, they still use it and they're on Instagram.
Twitter sphere.
Yeah, exactly. And they're on TikTok. But then there's other sports that don't use one or the other, or whatever the case may be, but they're on social media being constantly bombarded with ideas, tactics, strategies all day long. Just holding their focus is the most powerful thing you can do as a coach, because as a coach, if you're any good, and by the way, you don't have to really be that good. If you're any good, your strategy will work in time. It's just about holding their focus to get the strategy to give it the ability to mature.
Bingo.
So I'd say from a team perspective, all things objective. From an athlete perspective, hold their focus.
Yeah, nailed it. It's funny, even from a team perspective, right? Like, what's the number one thing every coach and team is looking for in a player? Consistency.
Yep.
Consistency builds trust and all those things, right? So solving for that, I'm always amazed at how much, again, one of those things where leaders, I want to build consistency, yet your message isn't consistency. Holding them focused on what you want them to do consistently, right? You have practices that are always doing completely different things, going against it. You're putting them on different lines. You're sharing different insights. And you're doing this consistently where it's like, well, which one is the most important to focus on? As opposed to simplicity plus consistency. Boom. You know what? I'm going to simplify it for you. This is what we're going to focus on consistently every single day. Create sustainability. You're going to see how it looks in reality, and then we're going to build on it. But it's amazing to me how much leaders today, right, a vast majority, struggle to understand that art. Like, I feel like, I don't know, back in the day, I feel like it was a simpler, right? Like, I remember having coaches that you'd go in and it was the same 5 drills, and that's what you did all the time. So there was some form of consistency to it. Sometimes there was madness associated with it, but at least there was a consistency. And to your point now, I feel like leaders are always trying to innovate and find something new. And it's like, but the foundation of consistency is still the same. Like, choose, right? We talk about the diner menu effect a lot. It's like, you go in, you walk in, you love the gyro at this place, then get the gyro and just, I love it here. I'm going to, you know what? I'm going to look. And now I'm looking at all the other ones. I don't know. What do we want to do? And it's like, just grab what you love here. Why would you grab anything else?
Yeah.
And it's like athletes and people are the same way. Like, well, this is the most effective way to do it intuitively, especially as a high performer.
Yep.
The truth, but it's amazing how even knowing that that's the truth, how we don't spend time of allowing and giving permission for these athletes and people to know, no, you're right. That is the truth. Keep going. Stay on that.
Yeah. It's so funny you bring that up because I never even thought of it. That is the biggest thing we ask for from our athletes. Stay consistent. And then as coaches, we'll just throw it all to the wind. Here's the plan. We'll do something different. Right.
It's unbelievable. I hear this all the time too, even in corporate environments, I talk about how, everyone has theories, a lot of ideas, but where's the doers? Who are going to keep things alive? Mm-hmm. It's a real issue. When you hear it's a real issue. Like, right. It's not being kept alive because the adults in the room have all lost focus too.
Yep.
And then they're out there as leaders, but it's like, but what are you consistently doing? What's your consistent messaging? What are you consistently building? What's your consistency in behavior? Like all that stuff. And it's amazing how it's such a major blind spot in leadership.
Yeah. I never even really thought of it, but that's, calling back to that clear cadence of communication with our team. Mm-hmm. That's what that is. You're establishing consistency. You're asking them to be consistent in whatever their efforts are, and their coaching efforts and their sales efforts, whatever it is, insert task. Mm-hmm. And like so many times we're not consistent with the cadence as leaders. We're not consistent with the actual plan, right? And I think that's another, like, you set out on this goal, you set out on this road, and then you get about 5 miles down and you make a left. It's like the destination is straight ahead. Why are you making a left? You know, it's so interesting. I love that you just said that, because I just opened my eyes to something brand new. I think we're doing it, but I never thought of it that way. And now I'm really happy to think of it that way.
Yeah. Beautiful. Well, it's that top of mind awareness, right? That's what we're all always fighting for.
Yep.
You know, we have the win, right? What's important now? And then it's like that topic of, like, as a leader, it's like principle-based thinking. You know, first principles is, what's the most important right now? Well, maybe in a year or two, that'll be important then, but putting my time into it now, what do I actually have to lead by example and model now is the biggest challenge, right? Because it's so easy to go take off with a new, shiny, novel idea, because the brain, right, neurologically loves that. Ooh, new. And it's the opposite. Is like, well, you know what the toughest thing is? The boring stuff.
Yep.
Like, that's true mental toughness.
Yeah.
Not I went out and punched someone. No. Can I keep handling the pressure, handling the challenges that are coming every single day, and take on what I need to do and what you need to do, and hold you up from a leadership standpoint? That's toughness. Like that aspect of it has always fascinated me, of like how we don't hammer away at that.
Yeah, that's how you get grizzled. You can't get grizzled without, you know.
That's it. The grizzle. I love it. I love it.
You know, it's interesting you say that too. The concept of, like, every single day being consistent. That's where true mental toughness lives. I think so often, like, we ask somebody why they stopped doing a thing that was working, and they have no answer. I love that. I talk about that all the time with pro athletes. They'll come home from their off season, and, you know, they'll do their strength and conditioning with me, and I'll say, hey, you know, what worked really well for you this year? This, and this. Cool. All right. How was the season? Oh, it was my best season ever. Awesome. You know, who was your hitting coach? Who was your pitching coach? What did you do from a throwing planning perspective? And they'll tell me exactly what they did. And then they'll also tell me that this was their best year ever. I'll say, awesome. So when do you start that? They'll go, no, I'm not going to do that this year. I'm like, what? It works. It works so well that you're throwing it out. And it's so interesting that, you know, the brain chases that novelty at such a high level.
Yeah. Yeah. Because again, right, it's the idea of, you know, and I always, you think of it from theoretical standpoint, it makes sense of, you spend so many years always trying to get better, right? Like I tell people all the time, the difference between amateur and pro is simple. As an amateur, you're always looking, okay, how can I improve? How can I improve? How can I improve? As a pro, you're looking for, how do I sustain what I have?
Yep.
That you're spending way more time on that, right, to stay in the game than you are, how can I get a lot better, right? Because once you know, all right, this is the training program I need to do, cool, done. All right, these are the skills that I have to stay sharp, cool, done. Slowly but surely, as each year progresses, you have less and less to think about, and like, I'm just doing that. I know it works.
Yeah.
But so the novelty starts to wear off in terms of, I have to do more eventually, especially if you're a more veteran type of player, right? You know, 4 or 5 years in, it's like, I am what I am. This is my identity. If I'm going to play 10 more years, I'm going to keep doing this. I'm not going to improve more. But when you're younger, it's always, especially today, right? It's, oh, I need 3 skills coaches. Like, and they're all saying different things, but this is great because I've got all the best. It's wild. It's wild. Well, you know, I love what we took this today, man. It was awesome. I loved having you on. The one thing I'd love to hear from you is, you know, now when you think about, you've come through as a leader, what do you love the most of how you've evolved as an athlete through this process? What have you loved about the opportunity to be involved in the athletic world as a human being, as a father now and all? Like, what have you loved about the process of the evolution of being an athlete that now you see in real world context is like pretty awesome?
So I'll give you two. Because one is very, very timely. And he hasn't made it public yet, but by the time you release this, even if it's just next week, it'll be public. My first ever professional athlete who I trained retired last week, and he told me first. So gonna try not to cry. So really cool, like full 360 moment. He was the first pro athlete that ever gave me an opportunity to work with him. And it was in the year before his draft year. And I remember like how nerve-wracking it was for me to be like, I have to like get him ready. And like, if he fails, it'll be on me, the point about earlier. And, fast forward now, whatever it was, 14, 15, I think it was 14 years of him playing professional baseball. And he's a dad now. He's an amazing dad now, as a matter of fact. And it was just like, when he sent me the message, he was like, hey, I'm letting you use a voice message on, we always voice message back and forth. He sent me this voice message. He's like, I want you to know first before I tell anybody else. I'm hanging him up, this is it. Played, he played all the way up to the major league level. He did the whole thing. He did it all. He played overseas. He did everything he could do. And he was like, I want you to know that I couldn't have done it without you, and all the things. And that moment for me, like, and this is just a week ago, or maybe it was Monday. It was either last Friday or Monday. Excuse my memory, but that moment for me was like a kind of a full circle, right? But also a like, wow, what we've been doing and what I've been doing since the inception of this thought that I could provide more, that I could care more than anybody else, is true. That was the moment of validity for my career, potentially, more so than anything else, more so than fourth round draft picks, more so than signing bonuses, more so than anything else. The moment that this guy said, hey, I wouldn't be the player, the dad, the person I am without you in my life, provided a level of clarity and validity for me that I've never gotten anywhere else. So number one. So that's good. So that's probably the thing that I'm most proud of in my leadership journey. And it just happened, which is pretty awesome. And I've had a lot of those cool moments, and a lot of those cool moments happen around our big event that's coming up in literally a week. It's November 21st is what we call the Appies. So the Appies is our awards dinner for our entire program, right? So not just our Berlin location, but also our Medford, Haddonfield, Mount Laurel location. So I'll be there. And it's our opportunity to elevate and recognize our members on a stage that has almost nothing to do with the physical change that they went through, and almost everything to do with the values that we try to embody day in and day out in our locations and in our facilities. So we give away we have 5 core values. We give away 2 awards for each. So it's 10 total awards. And then we give away 5 master awards, right? Man of the year, woman of the year, athlete of the year, remote athlete of the year, and rookie of the year. So we have 15 awards. It's a huge thing. It's a black tie event. We get it catered. We have sponsors. This year we have an ice sculpture, right? So like, just craziness. But I think as a leader, like, the most fun for me is those big grandiose events where I can bring people together and recognize them for not just making physical changes, for not just being consistent, but also for embodying a change beyond the physical, for embodying a change that is going to impact their lives inside and outside of the gym, inside and outside of sport. So that's like the most rewarding for me, to be able to celebrate that and know that at some level, selfishly, I played a role in that. Like you look in the mirror and you go, I did that. Like I was a part of that. And I my staff, I'm big on that for my staff. As granted, that day is going to be a lot of work. They got to report at 2:00 for a 7:00 event. They're not super pumped about it, because we have to transform a gym into a ballroom. But it's a big day for them too, to look and say, like, look, this is people like us. We keep saying it. People like us do things like this. People like us change lives every single day. And this is like the moment where we get to just pause and celebrate it. So as a leader, I'm so excited to give my staff that opportunity, and all of the members across our gyms. We sold it out in 5 days. So I'm so excited to be able to provide that moment, that moment of reflection, that moment of clarity of purpose. Just much the same way that athlete shooting me that voice message did for me, kind of like a little bit bigger 15-year arc. But so I'd say those 2 things are my favorite moments as a leader thus far, and I'm gonna hopefully keep having really great moments as a leader into the future.
Yeah, amen to that. Amen. Well, it's an amazing journey, right? And so appreciative of everything you shared today. It's clear how passionate you are and how much you care about the process, and what you're trying to build. And yeah, I'm excited to, continue the relationship and keep fostering, watch your growth, because it's no doubt, man, the continuation of evolving as an athlete, it's in you, man. That's obvious.
Right.
If people wanted to find you, if people wanted to find you, and how can they contact you, all that fun stuff.
Yep. I'm Happy Hour everywhere. So Happy Hour, just drop the H. Happy Hour on Instagram, Happy Hour on YouTube. I think I got like a couple subscribers over there. But yeah, so we're pumping out content. Like all the gyms are pumping out content all the time. So they are Active Personal Training are the adult brands, and then our athlete brand is ATS Strength. So at ATS Strength on Instagram and at Active Personal Training on Instagram as well. And then each location has their own. So it's a convoluted mess. But if you need to find me at Happy Hour, and then you can get everything else from there.
Love it. Well, again, brother, I appreciate it, man. This was unbelievable. Thank you so much
for having me, bro. This was awesome.
Oh, yeah. And then for those of you listening, again, thank you, for being on here and having a chat, having us go through this crazy world of leadership and listening in and all that. But again, anything that you took away, please feel free to share with anybody else. Contact us DM if you have any questions about anything that is. But remember, continue on building the process, hear these conversations from other leaders, take something away from yourself, and just keep evolving. Play for that feeling.